All right, welcome. We are here at San Jose, KSJC, having landed here yesterday afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, and we are now bound for Missoula. I've done a lot of videos of approaches and landings. I figure I might as well do one of takeoff for the one or two people that will actually ever watch this. Oftentimes, since Flight Simulator doesn't have the instant replay option yet, one of its best features, if you ask me, of the original or from FSX, I actually like to rewatch these later and kind of see mistakes that I've made, areas to improve. So anyway, here we are at one of the GA parking spots at KSJC. I will use the switch over this screen. This screen right here is the PFD, the primary flight display. This screen right here is currently also set as the PFD. I don't need two of them. So by pushing this button right here, I can't zoom in anymore, but by pushing this button right here, which is connected to the MFD, the multifunction display, it will bring up another screen with lots of helpful things on it. Our flight plan is not here, but it is entered. I don't know, maybe it just hasn't refreshed yet. It should be there. It should list our departure airport, waypoints along the way to Missoula. Okay. Well, see if that refreshes. Our flight today takes us from San Jose and then to the following waypoints: Sunol, S-U-N-O-L, Altam, 8-L-T-A-M, SAC, which is the Sacramento VOR, REO, which I'm guessing is the Reno VOR, Gyros, J-I-R-O-S, Jeleg, Jeleg, J-E-L-E-G, and KMSO. Using a third-party app called ForeFlight on my phone, which is connected to the sim, I bring up the plate for KMSO and can get the approach plate for the ILS approach to runway 12, which is what I have programmed into the flight plan. There it is. There it is now. You see? Sunol tells you what altitude you should be at each of these respective waypoints. Sacramento 14,300, Reno 31,000. Flight level 310 is our cruising altitude today. You need to use the mouse wheel to scroll down, apparently. There we go. There's the approach, ILS 12. At Gyros, we should be at 12,000. Not sure what all these are. This tells us that runway Jeleg at 10,500. I'll reconfirm all this by looking at the approach plates for the ILS runway 12. It confirms that at Jeleg we should be at 8,600, not 10,500, so that is not correct. We'll see if ATC gets that right or not when we get vectored in. But anyway, useful to kind of explore that a little bit. This refers to approach procedures, PROC. We won't use that because I found it to be a little unreliable. Map settings, weather. You can change what appears on this MFD by clicking, for example, weather selection. NEXRAD, referring to active radar on the ground. Top-down view, there is no weather. This here depicts weather in front of you on a horizontal level. This depicts weather in front of you on a vertical level. We may have to switch over that. I'm not, to be honest, totally clear on what the weather is along the way. which I know is bad, but hey, what are you going to do? Missoula airport elevation 3255, so always good to know your airport elevation when you're on approach. That much at least I can say I know. We've already done pushback. We've already gotten our IFR clearance. They cleared us up to 8,000 feet on our climb out. And we already gotten clearance from ground to get over to the runway. 30 left, if I recall them saying. A few other things just to get us ready before we take off. Our nav light's already on. I'll turn on our strobes and taxi light. Activate the AP trim to on. Otherwise the autopilot will not work. Fuel selector to auto. Fuel selector allows the fuel tank selector to switch between the left and right tank automatically. Left, right. It'll do that as you go through the flight. And if you look here, this is current fuel quantity in the left tank, current fuel quantity in the right tank, 102 gallons and 98 gallons respectively. Plenty of gas for this flight. A few other things we need to do in prepping. You'll notice this gives you cautionary advisements. Bleed off. That's just a reference to the fact that we need to pressurize the airplane, which we've now done. We'll activate our inertial separator for takeoff. We'll get to the pitot heat, stall heat later. You'll notice that this HSI or CDI, course deviation indicator, is linked to what it says there. If I could zoom in there, it says VOR1. Well, I don't have a VOR frequency plugged in to the radio right now, so actually I do, ILVK 110.5. But we're not going to fly by radio today. We're going to fly by GPS. So I'm going to go over to our that little bell was just an alert and a reminder that our inertial separator's on. We'll want to turn that off after we climb out, take off, and so forth. Anyway, we're going to switch on the PFD screen, PFD home, we're going to switch nav source from nav1, which is the radio frequency. I can actually show you. Navcom, I'm pushing this Navcom button. Audio and radios, you'll see 110.5 is the active radio frequency for nav1, which matches up over to here, which is ILVK. That might actually be the ILS approach frequency. It rings a bell. In any event, it doesn't matter because we're not going to fly by VOR radio frequencies on this one. We are going to use GPS. So how to switch this from VOR mode to GPS mode? Well, by going to the PFD home screen, nav source, click it. We don't want nav 2 either. We want, boom, FMS. And you'll notice that doing that changed the CDI to magenta, meaning that it is now linked to the GPS pre-loaded flight plan. Other minor things before we get going here, PFD settings, other PFD settings. I turn off the angle of attack because I don't find it helpful, particularly, well, it's not important why, but it's distracting, I find. Obviously, I would like to have wind on. But Microsoft still hasn't fixed the wind bug, so the winds are not working. But normally I would go to other PFD settings, wind, option 2 is what I like, and you see it's just showing 1 knot from the north, or from in front of us rather. In any event, I'm not going to use it. Maybe someday they'll fix that bug. We'll zoom out a little bit more. Right now we're zoomed in pretty good on the MFD on the airport. See, there we are. And we are going to take off from 30 left. Hopefully not a long taxi, but you never know with this thing. Anyway, we don't need to be zoomed in like that. Let's zoom back out. And you can see this white line depicts our flight path. The more I zoom out, right now we're zoomed out at 15 nautical miles. By zooming out even more, now this is very interesting. All these returns, these radar returns we're getting, is smoke. This is not a storm that's heading towards northern and central California. It's awesome and amazing to me that it's actually being depicted in the sim. The fires that are burning throughout northern, central, and southern California are especially aggravated because of an offshore wind. That is a wind that comes out of the northeast. And so that's what you're seeing these returns are. That's amazing. Wow. Anyway, you'll see we'll go up to Sacramento, as I suspected. SAC is the Sacramento VOR, which we're going to track via the GPS. So we'll turn off NextRad for now. Switch to map mode. Back to MFD, which we're already on. And I don't need to be quite so zoomed out either. So we'll do 20 miles as our zoom out. So we'll head kind of northwest, make a right turn, kind of over Fremont, and head to Missoula. A few other things, let's just make sure we're good to go. We do have the reconfirm, we have the pressurization addressed, parking brakes off, no need for the pitot heat or anything like that yet. Lights are good. Altitude issue's been addressed. We'll set our VS, our vertical speed mode, we'll turn that on. It doesn't become actually active until AP is pressed. I don't know about yaw damper pressing that now, but I'll do it in advance. I don't know if that is a problem or not, but otherwise I'll forget. I'm going to change our vertical speed to 2,000. Okay, and you can actually see that reflected right there. What that means is once we activate the autopilot, it will assume a climb rate of 2,000 feet per minute. I don't remember if I got a barometer from ATC yet. Let me just check. No. I don't see any history of them telling us what the barometer is. No. Okay, so I will use the tried and true method of adjusting the barometer. Pressing the letter B. There we go. Turns out our barometer currently is 29.88. So anyway, I've preset our vertical speed for 2,000 feet per minute. Once we climb out and are established on a climb out probably at about 170 knots, I'll switch over to the FLC, which will maintain our speed rather than a climb rate. And in maintaining that speed, it will maintain that climb rate. We'll address the heading bug here in a second after we get to the airport. So, turn off our master caution light, and let's fire it up. Just a quarter mile to the runway. I don't know if it's this clear and pleasant down in San Jose, up in San Jose. Sorry, I said down in San Jose because I used to live in San Francisco, so San Jose is south of the city of San Francisco. But I did load real weather, and the outside air temperature is listed at 24 degrees. I've noticed that when real weather doesn't load, the outside air temperature I think is always like 15 degrees Celsius. Plus, we saw those radar returns on the MFD, which suggests that we've got live weather. I don't know if that came through via the microphone, but that was my
runway 30 left, 8,600 feet remaining.
ForeFlight app, checking to make sure nobody's inbound. No one is. I don't know why in the world they're making us, why we can't just take off from here. I mean, I know we're not exactly at the end of the runway, but they're going to make us cross the runway, turn right, then right again. Here's the windsocks. Wind's a big issue still with Flight Sim. It's just not, it's not working. Well, they're taking us via this crazy route.
Approaching runway 30 right.
So before we cross runway 30 right, just reconfirm. Nobody's
Enter
around.
runway 30 right, 8,600 feet remaining.
And now we'll hang a right. And once we start our climb out, I'll say goodbye on this video, but I'm always doing landings. So I figured why not do a takeoff. Of course, another thing that's absolutely critical for takeoff, flaps. Whoops. Takeoff flaps. Reconfirm barometer. Good to go. Let's get over the runway threshold. We'll contact tower. As soon as we not as soon as we take off, but shortly after takeoff, I'll deactivate the inertial separator, activate the autopilot. That will, because the vertical speed indicator is already ready, that means the airplane will take over and maintain a 2,000 foot per minute climb out. And I will also press the nav button now, which means that as soon as we take off and activate the autopilot, it will start following the course. All right, so this is pretty funny the way they're taking us.
Approaching runway 30 right.
Thank you so much, ATC, for letting me
runway 30 right, 10,500 feet remaining.
Cross 2 runways. Nobody's coming. All right, so we're coming up over here now to 30 left. We're gonna stop right to, and you can actually see it with this helpful depiction.
Approaching runway 30 left.
We'll stop here before we enter the runway. We'll get clearance from the tower.
San Jose Tower, Dayer November, Tree 43 Whiskey Bravo at runway 30 left, ready for takeoff IFR to Missoula. Dayer November, Tree 43 Whiskey Bravo, cleared for takeoff runway 30 left. Cleared for takeoff runway 30 left, Dayer November, Tree 43 Whiskey Bravo.
All right. Before I do that, actually, I almost forgot. I do want to activate our landing lights and our pulse lights.
10,900 feet remaining.
And reconfirm. Nobody's coming. Good. This portion of the runway with the arrows on it is it's an offset threshold, so you can take off from it. You just can't land on it. This white flashing light is called the rabbit. Oops, overshot it just a tiny bit. All right. We're good to go. One last thing I'll check is, or what I'll do, I do as a sort of backup, if I have any navigation issues, I sync the heading indicator, which right now is represented by this blue thing that looks kind of like a, I don't know, like a little crown. So right now it's to north. So if I activated the autopilot and the heading button was clicked, it would turn us to the right to match up with wherever the heading bug is. This blue thing is called the heading bug. So I'm going to push this button, which will synchronize the heading bug to our current heading. So if when I activate the autopilot there's any problems with it adhering to the GPS flight plan, by problems I mean it turns wildly left or it turns wildly right, and trust me, this has happened, then I'll use the heading bug instead, which will keep us pointed in the right direction. All right, we are good to go. Check everybody's around, good to go. Lights are all where they need to be. Flaps are set at takeoff. Let's go. Get up to 40%, make sure we're stable. And let's go. Rotate about 90 knots. We're up. Landing gear. Flaps retracted. Autopilot activated. So you see everything appears good?
Air Tree Whiskey Bravo, contact Norcal departure on 121.3.
A little high temperature right there, the ITT.
121.3, Air Tree Whiskey Bravo.
Got a real twitchy rudder. I'm sorry, I have a real
departure day or November
twitchy throttle.
Tree Whiskey Bravo is at 1,000 feet, climbing 8,000 feet.
I'm going to deactivate our inertial separator now.
Air November 343 Whiskey Bravo, Norcal departure, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.88.
29.88 still is the same as what we have it set at. So you see, anyway, we're on autopilot right now. The yaw damper is activated. Because we have pre-select nav and vertical speed, climbing rate right now is 2,000 feet per minute. It grabbed the GPS map, preloaded without any issues. A little high temperature there again. And here we go. At its Moffett Field, it's a military airport. It's the very south end of San Francisco Bay. Still running on ultra settings wise, and pretty happy with it. So you see right now the airplane's churning. I've noticed this before where the route as depicted on the MFD differs from the actual route flown. This is a feature, I think, of the G1000, which is this suite of electronics that allows the airplane to sort of soften up its turns so that it's not turning at 90-degree angles. But functionally, it's flying the same route. When you zoom out, it's much less evident that it isn't on the precise route. In point of fact, it is on the precise route, but its depiction graphically differs. So we're on climb out now. That's, I think that's Diablo Mountain, or Mount Diablo, as I recall. I lived up here long enough, you'd think I'd know. So that's that. We got our takeoff and climb out. We're at 6,300 feet. Eventually getting up to 31,000. We're going to sign off now. We'll load up part 2 for approach and landing at Missoula. Have a good one.